Hello everyone, just a quick note on the information presented here. Although I am a fan of keeping up with traditions, all material with the seal of the Grey League is not strictly canon. I used information from published books as well as the Journal and Canon Fire, but added my own flavor here and there. If this is not your first time at the League, then please push the subscribe button and the bell icon so my griffins will tell you when a new video is online. You can also find me at Twitter as well as through my website. I've put a link in the description. The different human tribes of the Flanaess were scattered during the last 1,000 years of human migration, as well as through the many wars that raged the land. Intermarriages have become very common, and purebloods are rare these days, in the common year of 595. Most humans today are somewhat of a mixture of two or more human bloodlines, and do not have a prominent physical feature of one culture. Interestingly, a human of the Flanaess rarely speaks about skin color because of this. Still, there are regions where one culture has remained somewhat pure, and there are regions where one culture has remained more dominant than another. For you, members of the League, I'll shed some light on the customs and traditions of the human tribes of Urth. Historians believe that the Oeridian people originated in the land located far to the west, beyond the borders of what used to be the Great Buckloonish Empire, and that tribes may, to this day, still live there. What we know for sure is that before the twin cataclysms, numerous Oeridian horse tribes lived in the loose confederacy in the basin, now known as Ull. The Buckloonish neighbors looked at them as a barbaric people, to be used as slaves, and called them Jordi, but Jordi was but a name of one tribe. Although the Oeridians occasionally served either the Buckloonish or the Sul as mercenaries, they were eventually driven from these pastoral lands and into the central and eastern Flanaess by the Bucklooni and Sul incursions, as well as the evil humanoids employed by them. Only the Jordi stayed behind in Ull. Now, for more information about the migration of the Oeridians, have a look at my video. I've put the links down in the description. Now, whatever the truth of their origins, history has proven that they are a resolute people at their best when the odds are stacked against them. Hardy warriors, they battled their way east, allying themselves with the Flan and, when necessary, with the Elves to defeat the Sul. The migrating Oeridians were such able fighters that they rose from enslavement to the most dominant position in the Flanaess in a relatively short time. Oeridian tribes in the lands east of the Crystal Mist stayed nomadic and tribal for only a relatively short time, as they quickly realized that to survive they needed a new system. Men, such as King Lum and King Turni, started the transition to a monarchical system, and the large Eardi tribe made it cosmopolitan. The Eardi spread across the Flanaess, allying with other cultures, assimilating Flan and Sul people, establishing strongholds, and at the height of their power, the great Oeridian kingdom of Eardi spanned most of the Flanaess from the Yatil Mountains to the Solnor Ocean in the east and to the Azure Sea in the south. Nowadays, the Oeridians are prominent everywhere across the Flanaess, but nearly pure Urid bloodlines can be encountered in Perrenland, Furiondi, the North Province, Sundi, the Shield Lands, and Onwal. And while many tribes still exist, the prominent tribes still encountered today are the Nehron of modern Nyrond, the Feroi of modern Furiondi, the Volar of modern Veluna and the Helqqq of modern Keoland, who established the Kingdom of Keoland. They have olive skin tones, and their hair color can range anywhere from brown or auburn hair to light as honey or even as dark as coal. Their eyes, likewise, span the color spectrum, although brown eyes are the most common. They tend to be well-built, flexible, and sturdy, with strong jaw lines. The prototypical human, with men averaging between 1.70 m to 1.80 m, and weighing anywhere between 80 and 95 kilograms. And women average between 1.65 m to 1.70 m and weigh between 55 and 65 kilograms. The single most distinguishing characteristic of the Oeridians is their dress. Traditional Oeridian clothing usually consisted of a short tunic, snug trousers, cloak, and caps tailored for ease of movement, and colors and patterns showed clan allegiance, which was a very important aspect. Nowadays, the most prominent Oeridian tribes have been greatly influenced by the Flan and in some degree by demi-human cultures, and each has taken a slightly different style. Oerdi have access to the latest fashion and incorporated from all kinds of cultures. Fine wool dyed in rich colors, notably reds, greens, golds and blues, is the most popular fabric for all classes by far, followed by linen and hemp. Fur was worn mostly as a lining layer, only by those who could afford it. Oerdi fashion was foremost the flashiest attire of the Flannes, and from the southern Helqqq they borrowed the decorative technique that involves making small cuts on the outer fabric of a garment in order to reveal the sometimes brightly colored inner garment. It is performed on all varieties of clothing, both men's and women's. Nehon Oeridians generally have the same fashion as the Oerdi, but favor plates and checks designs with ovals or diamonds being preferred. The practice that colors and patterns showed clan allegiance is fading now, and people nowadays favor personal preferences. Clothing is, however, rich. A fur-trimmed tunic, pleated onto a lining, and baggy sleeves with an embroidered shirt showing the neck and wrists. Women wear gowns of thick material brocaded with silver or gold, with a low waist and high neckline. Feroe and Valar typically wear a tunic made from fine material and belted at the waist. Over this tunic they wear a cloak with a neck opening in the center and the rest of the cloth falling in the front and over the back of the person. Nobility also wear leggings of strong color, such as blue, red, or purple for royalty. Valarian women dress modestly, but the clothes were made from expensive materials, such as silk. And although the Faroe and the Valar are quite similar, the difference is in the details. Valar will more likely adorn themselves with some religious objects, while Faroe will wear regalia honoring their own nobility and monarchy more often than not. Helqqq have a very complicated culture, as they assimilated a strong Flan heritage as well as a Sul identity. Fashion has thus been heavily influenced and can be roughly divided in the hinterland fashion and the fashion of the coastal areas. The hinterland is heavily influenced by the Flan traditions, with a more practical view on fashion. Jackets of wool, tight trousers, a fringed mantle or cloak, and a shirt from mid-thigh and held together with fashionable belts. Women likewise wear practical clothing that changed depending on the season. In the coastal areas, however, they have taken the most fashionable details of the Flan, such as decorations, tattoos, and the skill to distinguish themselves through clothing. The coastal Helqqq have made fashion a kind of a social game. One might even say it is a secret language. It is very stylish and flashy for a start, and they introduced the decorative techniques of slashing, but also the variety of headdresses worn by men and women is a typical Helqqq attribute. Their cloaks are usually great cloaks, which stretch down to the chins or ankles and have wide sleeves gathered at the shoulders. Both cloaks and great coats have flair, and they will use the extra length of cloth to make illustrious gestures. Language is the glue that binds people together, and besides fashion, the Oeridians are quite proud of their individual dialects. Firstly, we have Old Oeridian, a young language, and we might call it Erdish, took in few to none outside influences until a few centuries ago. As a result, translation into any language except Common is difficult at best. It is still commonly used in the Far East of what was once the Great Kingdom. But all over the lands of the Great Kingdom, books and documents were mostly written in Old Oeridian. Following, we have Nirondese, a dialect of Common and spoken in the rural areas of Nyrond. It is the primary language of peasants, shopkeepers, and other common folk, folk who distrust outsiders and wish not to be understood by them. Learned folk, middle class and upper class people, generally speak Common in public and official gatherings, but they do understand Nirondese. Keolandish is a widespread dialect of Old Oeridian with a variety of local admixtures. It is only spoken in and around Keoland, and its people are quite proud of it. It can even be heard in certain circles of the upper class of the hinterland, and even here and there in some coastal areas. And finally we have Velondi, which is a tribal language still used by the rural folk of either Friondi or Veluna. Because of its ancient beginnings, those who speak only Common cannot understand it, and being a tribal language, it does not have a written form. Only the oral tradition survived the times. That brings us to the language that is used all over the Flanaess, Common. With the enormity of the kingdom of Erdi, it is not surprising that trade was massively important. Peace with the Bakloonish remaining realms brought exotic trading caravans all the way to the eastern shores of the Flanaess, and there was need for a mutual language, a language to make trade even more thriving. Common was thus born, out of a combination of ancient Bakloonish and the dialect of Old Oeridian. Regional variations of the trade tongue sprung up, but all these elements became blended and standardized during the years of Erdi dominance, resulting in the birth of the Overking's Common tongue, which was later simply called Common. Any traveler must learn Common or be greatly disadvantaged. The Oeridian empires may have been built on the shoulders of soldiers. Arcane users were equally important to their creation across the Flanaess. Oeridians have a natural aptitude for magic and, following their warlike tendencies, tend to focus on battle-oriented spells as well as the enchantment of magic items to be used in combat. Spellcasters among the Oeridians are often known to be uncompromising, practical, and generally of a militant character. This does not come as a surprise, because the Oeridians fought from day one to carve out a living in Ull, and throughout the centuries used anything to fight for their freedom. Many scholars believe that it was their power on the battlefield that made spellcasters the natural leaders of their people and allowed them to carve out nations. But it takes more than waging war to carve out an empire, and some scholars point out that they used their skill in bending magic towards construction, irrigation, iron forging, and much, much more. It's the arcane users' creative thinking what actually solidified their status among their culture and allowed them to become the rulers of the Flanaess. It comes to no surprise that the Oeridians seem to have a particular fondness for martial gods, but their true devotion was born ages ago, from the practical needs of the day-to-day life of the farmer and the herdsman. They, as a migratory group of nomads, worshipped mainly gods of the winds and sky, of trade and travel. They honored all of their gods equally and practiced a very simple form of worship that had no need for a church or a priest. Now, over time, and through the influence of the Bakluni and the Sul, the forces they worshipped were given more human form and, as such, needed a house to live in. Thus, temples were raised and cults were born, statues depicting the gods were created, and strict religious canon was written down. Although the Oeridians didn't accept the gods of other cultures, they did copy cult models, with the difference that worship seemed to be a priest bargaining with gods. Their rather emotionless and very practical approach created the base for new social values and laid the foundation of a unified people. It is from this time that the most important relic hails, the texts of Joidi. Now, the twin cataclysms solidified the importance of their deities. People kept worshipping Venus and his offspring on a daily basis, but other gods achieved prominence during this time. Farlang, and Celestian in particular, who guided them through the difficult life they led during the migration. During the period where the Oeridians founded their realms, the importance of a priest grew substantially. No longer migrants looking to form a permanent settlement, they needed priests that can assist conquerors. From then on, the war gods Heronius and Hextor, as well as the god of power and prestige Zilchis, rose from minor cults to the front of the pantheon. These gods aided in providing law and order in areas ravaged by war, and promoted prosperity for the Oeridians. The stern god of unbending light, Poltus, became the priesthood to overshadow the others and was able to create the Imperial Church of Erdi, which assisted the rise of the Erdi to supremacy across the Flanaess. In the Sheldamer Valley, however, the Oeridians merged more or less peacefully with the Sul, who brought their own pantheon. Since the ancient texts of Joidi talked about the mysterious 12 gods without further information, Sul deities as well as the Oeridians were joined together. It also differs from the Great Kingdom in that religion in Keoland has always been a relatively chaotic affair, because the founders of the nation decreed that sectarian rivalries between the feuding Sul houses and incoming Oeridian tribes meant there would be no national church. Today, the purely Oeridian gods are still prominently worshipped, but the mixing of cultures also mixed pantheons, and Oeridians are as likely to worship previously foreign gods as much as their own ancestral gods. The most powerful empire in the modern Flanaess was created by the Erdi, a conquering tribe of Oeridians, who subjugated and assimilated all who opposed them, an impossible feat if they did not possess a certain lifestyle. Let's first take a brief look at the ancient Oeridians. They were known to be fierce warriors, self-sacrificing and very loyal. History has shown as much. These traits may not be as evident today. Many Oeridians do remain temperamental and prone to violence. But there is one social mindset that to this day governs the lifestyle of this culture, and that is the warrior code. The warrior code is forever present within the minds and hearts of the Oeridian people, even in their day-to-day lives. It explains their preference for a strict social order, usually fitting themselves at the top, and how they channel their aggressive attitude into political conflict and subterfuge, and how their unshaking determination, straightforwardness, and pragmatic personality sees them through all obstacles. The code teaches them from the earliest age to respect authority and for men and women of martial prowess. To gain such respect, one must bear arms and pursue a leadership role in their daily lives. It is thus no wonder that their interests lay in exploration, in hunting, fighting, empire building, and less in intellectual pursuits. Their skill of manufacturing weapons and armor is also highly respected among the Oeridian people. Even dwarves have been known to admire the Oeridians' skill in this area. Oeridians take great care with their armaments. Neglecting armor and weapons is a great offense against the warrior code. Their skill at warfare is to this day unsurpassed, and many other cultures have a hard-learned respect for it, and it stands as a contest of their code. But the warrior code is even present during peacetime, where practicality is key to a quick and solid solution. The code does not prohibit the enjoyment of life in any way, but when singing, they sing powerful songs. When celebrating, they hold grand celebrations with challenging physical games, and when worshipping their deity, they do it not out of weakness, but out of determination. The code has influenced nations that boast a strong Oeridian bloodline to differentiate themselves from other Oeridian kingdoms. To gain the respect of other nations, they focused on a particular fighting style, and it is no wonder they are immensely proud about it and will defend its honor no matter what. I will outline a few. In Furiondi, mounted combat is a highly valued fighting formation. As such, the cavalry and mounted archer units are considered some of the best, if not the best, in all the Flannes. Nyrond is renowned for its swordsmen, best in single combat rather than in a pitched battle. One Oeridian swordsman is actually trained to fight multiple targets simultaneously, making them quite useful in skirmishes and in quelling any upheavals that might occur. In Keoland and all over the Sheldamer Valley, single-handed axes and spears are often used. Two-handed spears and axes, as well as the occasional claymore or maul, are used as well. And shields tend to be used in conjunction with single-handed weapons. Light and even no armor is preferred above the medium or heavy armor, as it will give them more flexibility on the field of battle. The Oeridians of the former Great Kingdom have the best archers, both mounted and on foot, of all the Oeridian nations. However, modern-day Elissa and the North Kingdom have reverted to infantry shield formations, as mounted troops are far more costly and their archers have little effect on the undead armies which infect their lands. And finally, the more peace-loving Oeridians of Veluna prefer bludgeoning weapons, and also known to have the only man-catcher unit in existence. Now, I hope that has shed some light on the Oerid culture. If you want to compare Oeridians with the culture of Earth, then I would describe them as West European and Mediterranean. Now, if you enjoyed my video, please head down to the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and bell icon, and that would be an amazing help for my channel. If you want to interact more, head over to my Twitter or my website, and if you want to contribute and join the league, then head over to my website as well, All the links are in the description. And finally, I want to thank my patrons and followers who support my work and keep the channel going. Take care and keep gaming.